What's up, guys? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, whatever time of day it is, man. I'm glad you're back as we're continuing and finishing our study on Ruth. It's been a good journey, guys. I mean, we've got to see the sovereignty of God, how bad things may seem bad, but God is working them out to do some wonderful things. And we're about to hit the climax of the sovereignty of God in this story as we finish off with finding out who the son that Ruth is about to have is going to be. So I'm excited. It's been really good. And we're about to head on to the New Testament. After this, we will begin our study on 1 Peter. So don't miss out on that, man. Tomorrow, 1 Peter. Okay? But let's go ahead and jump into it. And I hope that you guys have been taking this, understanding what is actually being said in the story, and then what is being said about God, what's being said about man, and then finally how we can apply this to our lives, guys. Yeah, it's simple. It's simple, man. We can do it. We can do it. It may not be the easiest thing, but I believe that God has empowered us to do so. So let's go on and jump into it. Ruth, it says, so Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he went into her. And the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. Then the woman said to Naomi, Blessed is the Lord, who has not left you without a redeemer today, and may his name become famous in Israel. May he also be to you a restorer of life and a sustainer of your old age. For the daughter-in-law who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons has given birth to him. Then Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. The neighbor woman gave him a name, saying, A son has been born to Naomi. So they called him Obed. He is the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now these are the generations of Perez. To Perez was born Hezron. To Hezron was born Ram, Amminadab, and to Amminadab was born Nahshon, and to Nahshon Salmon, and to Salmon was born Boaz, Obed, and Obed was born Jesse, and to Jesse David. So what's actually being said? Well, what we got is Ruth just had a baby, and Naomi has a redeemer to take care of her family. And the baby that Ruth has is David, the king, the greatest king of Israel. Yeah. And it just talks about how Naomi was redeemed, that Ruth was just a wonderful woman because of the love that she had for Naomi, that she was able to achieve things that normally wouldn't even have been able to be achieved, wouldn't have been thought to have been possible. And then she has a son, David, the greatest king. So this is some wonderful things that happen to this. What does it say about God? Well, definitely says sovereignty. That's if you've been listening to this podcast for the last couple of days, you realize that that's got to be what it says about God in the whole thing. And this is where we find out the finished product of his sovereignty. Because while you're in the midst of the trouble, while you're in the midst of the trial, it's hard to see where God is going. And so all we can do is trust and have faith and do what he says. Just walk in what he says. Because we can't see the future. And when we look back on it, we can say, man, God was moving. But during the time, it is difficult, man. And I already know that. But the sovereignty of God and seeing these stories play out the way they play out should help us to realize that he is still in control when we're in these times. And what's it say about man? Well, I think they're saying specifically about the Christian is that those who love him and care for him, that he does keep us. He sustains us. And that as Christians, we should transfer our faith. And Naomi transferred her faith to her daughter-in-law. And Ruth lived out that faith by taking care of and being with her mother-in-law in love, living a life that was noble, where others could see and recognize that there was something different about her, even though she wasn't an Israelite by birth. That is how, as Christians, we should act. And how can we apply this to our lives? Well, we can apply this to our life by being who God has called us to, living a life worthy of the gospel, the gospel that God's called us to be humble, to love, to seek justice, love mercy, and know God. I do want to give a little excursus on this. It's funny to think that at the end of Ruth, it says, and David, like we would know who he is. If a person were to pick up the Bible and read this for the first time, starting in Genesis, and then they're finally at Ruth, they would be asking the question, who is David? Like, why is he so important? Why is he at the end of this? They would know Rachel, Leah, Tamar, Judah. They would know them, but when it says Jesse and David, they'd be like, why is this in here? Because David hasn't came yet. He's in 1 Samuel. But the Hebrew Bible wasn't constructed the way that the Christian Bible was. Now, all the books are there. We have all the same books, but the order of the books is different. And the Hebrew Bible, like I talked about earlier, Ruth is after Proverbs. And so it connects or hooks up the idea of the virtuous woman, the idea of the noble woman. It connects those things. It links those things. And then it says, as a blessing of the noble woman, then a blessing of that is great children. And the great child that Ruth has because of God's just grace upon her life is David. And by the time a Hebrew would be reading this, he would know full and well the stories of the greatness of David, because those were talked about in the book of Samuel and the book of Kings and the book of Chronicles. Or not Chronicles, I'm sorry, the book of Samuel and the book of Kings. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed our study through Ruth. We're going to be on 1 Peter tomorrow. Can't wait for that. And I hope you guys apply some of these things to your life as we take this faith that we have and transfer it to another. But we also walk it out in our lives so that we understand and know how to face the things that this world tries to bring on. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.